The Silent Watchers. For 500 long years, the galaxy had burned with endless war. The Zephyrian Collective and the Nexus Federation, two massive alien empires, had turned space itself into a battlefield where mercy was a forgotten word and peace was just a dream that died with each destroyed world. Their fleets moved like hungry wolves across star systems, consuming everything in their path. Planets became ash, moons were shattered into debris, and entire species vanished from existence as these two powers fought for control of the galaxy. The Zephyrians were masters of biological warfare, their ships crawling with living weapons that could adapt to any defense. They believed that only the strongest deserved to survive, and they had spent centuries proving their point by turning conquered worlds into breeding grounds for their war beasts. Their vessels looked like massive insects, dark and chitinous, bristling with organic weapons that pulsed with deadly life. The Nexus Federation fought with cold mechanical precision. Their ships were geometric nightmares of metal and energy, powered by artificial intelligence that calculated the most efficient ways to destroy their enemies. They saw emotion as weakness and had replaced most of their biological components with cybernetic enhancements. To them, the galaxy was a machine that needed to be properly organized under their rule. Between these two monsters, smaller civilizations tried desperately to survive. Some hid in the dark corners of space, others paid tribute to both sides, and many simply vanished into the void rather than face the choice between slavery and extinction. The galaxy had forgotten what peace looked like, but in a quiet corner of the Milky Way, in a small solar system that most star charts didn't even bother to mark, something else was watching. Earth, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, had been observing this galactic war for over 2 centuries. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were either unknown or considered primitives who had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Station Horizon, hidden deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The massive facility had been humanity's best-kept secret for 50 years, a monitoring post that watched the galaxy burn while Earth prepared for the day the fire might reach them. Sarah's gray hair was pulled back in a strict military style, and her dark eyes held the weight of secrets that could change the course of galactic history. "Admiral, we're receiving another distress signal from the Kepler system," reported Lieutenant Torres from her console. "The Zephyrians are glassing the 4th planet. Estimated population was 12 million. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 12 million lives, gone in an afternoon. It was just another number in a war that had already claimed trillions. Mark it in the log. Continue monitoring." Commander Jake Morrison entered the command center, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. Jake was the kind of man who looked like he could punch through a bulkhead and often seemed like he wanted to. His scarred hands spoke of years spent building humanity's secret defenses, and his expression was grim as always. "The Prometheus project is ready for final testing," he announced quietly. "Dr. Vasquez says we can begin whenever you give the order." Sarah nodded. The Prometheus project was humanity's insurance policy, decades of research and development hidden from the galaxy's eyes. While other species fought with weapons their ancestors had used for millennia, humans had spent their isolation innovating, creating technologies that the rest of the galaxy couldn't even imagine. "Not yet, Jake. We're not ready to reveal ourselves. The longer they think we're primitive, the better our chances when the time comes." "If the time comes," Jake corrected. "Maybe they'll destroy each other before they notice us." Sarah looked at the holographic display, showing the current state of the galactic war. Red and blue dots marked Zephyrian and Nexus territories, with contested systems flickering between colors as battles rage. "No, Jake. The time will come. Wars like this don't burn out. They spread. Eventually, they'll reach us." As if summoned by her words, Captain Lu Wei's voice crackled through the communication system. Lu commanded humanity's small fleet of stealth reconnaissance ships, vessels so advanced they could slip through enemy sensor networks like ghosts. His ships had been mapping the galaxy for years, always watching, never seen. "Admiral Chen, we have a situation. One of my scouts picked up a damaged vessel heading toward our system. It's Nexus Federation. Heavy damage. Life support failing. Projected course will bring it to Jupiter space in 18 hours. But your species," Zex-47's voice was filled with confusion. "Our records show you've barely achieved interplanetary flight." "That's what we wanted you to think," Alina replied. "It's much easier to prepare for war when your enemies don't know you exist." The Nexus crew was given comfortable quarters and medical treatment for their injuries. Their ship was repaired with human technology that was decades ahead of anything they'd ever seen. But they were also shown just enough of humanity's true capabilities to ensure they understood the situation they were in. When they finally departed Europa, they carried with them a message for both the Nexus Federation and the Zephyrian Collective. The message was simple and polite, delivered in perfect translations of both species' languages. "The Terran species wishes to remain neutral in your conflict. We ask that you respect our territorial boundaries and avoid any hostile actions toward our system. We hope for peaceful relations with all galactic civilizations." What the message didn't say, but what the Nexus crew understood perfectly, was the unspoken threat behind those polite words. Humanity wasn't asking for neutrality. They were demanding it, and they had the power to enforce that demand. The galaxy's first glimpse of human technology sent shockwaves through both empires. Intelligence reports flew across star systems, carrying impossible stories of a species that could disable starships without firing a shot, technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics, and a level of advancement that neither empire had expected to find in such a remote system. Both the Zephyrian Collective and the Nexus Federation reached the same conclusion. Humanity was either a potential ally worth courting or a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could grow stronger. Neither option involved leaving Earth alone. Admiral Chen stood in Station Horizon's command center, watching as alien fleets began to move toward the Sol system. Dozens of ships from both empires, converging on humanity's home with intentions that ranged from diplomatic to genocidal. "Jake," she said quietly, "activate the Titan Protocol. It's time to wake up our sleeping giants." Commander Morrison smiled grimly and entered a series of codes that hadn't been used since the project began 20 years ago. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities hidden under miles of rock and ice, ancient systems began to power up. Humans who had volunteered to be more than human began to wake from their long sleep. The galaxy thought it had seen what humanity could do. They were about to learn they had seen nothing at all. As enemy fleets approached Earth, humanity prepared to reveal its true nature. They had spent centuries watching, learning, and preparing. Now, as war finally came to their doorstep, they were ready to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened a species that had turned patience into a weapon and preparation into an art form. The age of human silence was over. The age of human power was about to begin. The awakening storm. The approaching fleets cast long shadows across the solar system as they emerged from hyperspace. 47 Zephyrian bioships writhed through the void like living nightmares, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent weapon systems. 38 Nexus Federation vessels approached from the opposite direction, their geometric forms bristling with mechanical precision and cold intelligence. Both fleets had come to claim or destroy what they saw as a promising but dangerous new species. Neither fleet expected what happened next. General Marcus Stone stood in the depths of Mount Cheyenne, 2 miles beneath the Colorado Mountains, watching as the final Titan Protocol soldiers emerged from their cryo chambers. These weren't ordinary humans anymore. 20 years of voluntary enhancement had transformed them into something that existed at the edge of human possibility. Their bones were laced with carbon nanotube matrices that made them nearly unbreakable. Their nervous systems had been enhanced with quantum processors that allowed them to think and react faster than any biological organism should have been able to. Their muscles had been rebuilt with synthetic fibers that could generate 10 times normal human strength. But the most important enhancement was the one that couldn't be measured in numbers. Each Titan had been psychologically conditioned to feel no fear, no doubt, and no mercy when defending humanity. They were Earth's final argument in any discussion about survival. "General Stone," came Admiral Chen's voice through the facility's communication system. "Both fleets are entering the outer system. They'll reach Earth orbit in 6 hours. Marcus looked at the 50 Titans standing at attention before him. Each one was worth a company of regular soldiers, and they knew it. "Understood, Admiral. Titans are ready for deployment." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. After 2 centuries of careful observation, first contact was about to happen whether humanity was ready or not. "What's the ship's condition?" "Barely holding together, Admiral. Looks like it took heavy fire from Zephyrian bioweapons. The crew is probably desperate enough to land anywhere that looks safe." "Jupiter space," Sarah muttered. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, housed a small research station. If the alien ship detected it, humanity's secret would be exposed. "Jake, activate Protocol 7. I want all deep space assets on standby. Liu, shadow that ship, but don't interfere. Let it land on Europa." "Ma'am." Jake looked surprised. "If we let them land, they'll detect the research station." "Exactly." Sarah's expression hardened. "It's time we learned more about our neighbors. And it's time they learned that Earth isn't as helpless as they think." The next 18 hours passed like a held breath. The damaged Nexus ship, designated as a light cruiser by human intelligence, limped into Jupiter's orbit trailing plasma and debris. Its hull was partially dissolved by Zephyrian acid weapons, and whole sections had been eaten away by their bioconstructs. The ship was dying, and its crew had no choice but to seek shelter. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the Europa research station as the alien vessel settled onto the icy surface of the moon. Elena was humanity's leading expert on xenobiology, though she had never seen a living alien until today. Her hand shook slightly as she monitored the ship's energy readings. 3 life signs, she reported to Admiral Chen. "They're sending out standard distress signals on multiple frequencies. They don't seem to realize we're here yet." "Wait for them to discover us," Sarah ordered. "When they make contact, be friendly but cautious. Let them think we're just a small research outpost." It didn't take long. The Nexus crew, desperate for help, began scanning their surroundings and quickly detected the human facility. Their first communication was a mixture of relief and arrogance that would prove to be their final mistake. "Primitive life forms." The translated message read, "You will provide us with the materials and labor necessary to repair our vessel. Compliance will result in your integration into the Nexus Federation. Resistance will result in termination." Elena looked at her team of researchers, all of whom were trying not to laugh. They were some of the most brilliant scientists in human space, and they'd just been called primitive by aliens whose ship was held together with emergency patches. "Dr. Vasquez," came Admiral Chen's voice through their secure channel. "You may begin the demonstration." Elena smiled and activated Europa Station's true purpose. What the aliens thought was a simple research outpost began to transform. Hidden panels slid open, revealing defense systems that humanity had been perfecting for decades. Energy weapons that could cut through any known material powered up with a low humming sound. Gravity manipulators created localized fields that could crush a starship or launch it into space. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Turan Research Division." She broadcast to the alien ship. "You are welcome to request assistance, but threats will not be tolerated." The response was predictable. The Nexus crew, trained to see any resistance as an act of war, powered up their ship's remaining weapons and prepared to teach these primitives a lesson. Their plasma cannons charged, their missile systems armed, and their AI calculated the most efficient way to destroy the human facility. They never got the chance to fire. Europa Station's defense grid activated in the space of a heartbeat. The Nexus ship found itself wrapped in a gravity field so powerful that its hull began to creak and bend. Its weapon systems, overloaded as energy disruptors, flooded them with interference. Its engines died as magnetic pulse generators shut down every electronic system on the vessel. In less than 30 seconds, one of the galaxy's most feared warships had been reduced to a floating piece of scrap metal. "Now," Elena said pleasantly, "would you like to discuss repairs?" The 3 surviving Nexus crew members were brought aboard Europa Station in a state of shock. Commander X-47, the ship's AI-enhanced captain, stared at the human facility with sensors that couldn't quite believe what they were recording. The primitive station was more advanced than anything in the Nexus fleet. "How?" was all he could manage to say. Elena led them through corridors lined with technology that shouldn't have existed. Medical systems that could regrow lost limbs, energy sources that seemed to violate thermodynamics, and computers that made Nexus I look like children's toys. "We've been watching your war for 200 years, Elena explained as they walked. "We've learned a great deal about both your technologies and your weaknesses." "Good. But Marcus, we're not just defending anymore. It's time to make a statement." Captain David Kim, leader of the elite Ghost Battalion, stepped forward. His squad specialized in operations that officially didn't exist, using technology that officially hadn't been invented. "Sir, the Ghost ships are prepped and ready. We can hit their command vessels before they know we're there." Marcus nodded. The Ghost ships were humanity's masterpiece of stealth technology. They could slip through enemy sensor networks like they weren't there, appear in the middle of enemy formations, and disappear again before anyone could react. Each ship was crewed by enhanced humans who had volunteered to push the boundaries of what their species could become. "Admiral Chen," Marcus spoke into his communicator, requesting permission to begin Operation Awakening. "Permission granted. Show them what humanity really looks like." The first sign that something was wrong came when the Zephyrian fleet's biosensors began screaming warnings about massive energy signatures appearing throughout the solar system. These weren't the small defensive installations they'd expected from a primitive species. These were weapon platforms that registered as more powerful than anything in either fleet. Commander Vex Prime, the Zephyrian fleet leader, felt his bio-enhanced nervous system flood with confusion. His species had evolved beyond normal biology, becoming living weapons that adapted to any threat. But his sensors were telling him that humanity had somehow hidden installations throughout their entire star system, and each one was more advanced than Zephyrian technology. "Impossible," he hissed through vocal cords that had been replaced with sonic weapons. The intelligence reports said they were barely space-capable. His answer came in the form of 12 human vessels that simply appeared around his flagship. They hadn't approached from any direction, hadn't been detected by any sensor. They were just suddenly there, sleek and dark, like pieces of the void itself had taken shape. Commander Aria Santos piloted the lead Ghost ship with a kind of casual precision that came from years of training in impossible situations. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to process information faster than her ship's computers, and her neural interface gave her a connection to her vessel that was more intimate than most people had with their own bodies. "Zephyrian fleet," she broadcast on all frequencies, "you are trespassing in Terran space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vex Prime's response was predictable. The Zephyrians had never retreated from anything, and they weren't about to start with what they saw as an inferior species. His bioships began to shift and change, organic weapons emerging from their hulls like blooming flowers of death. The Ghost ships struck before the Zephyrians could finish their transformation. Aria's vessel fired what looked like a simple energy beam, but the technology behind it was anything but simple. The beam phased through the Zephyrian flagship's organic armor as if it wasn't there, then solidified inside the ship's core systems. The result was catastrophic. The bioship's living hull began to shut down as its nervous system was severed in a dozen places. Around the fleet, similar scenes played out as Ghost ships used weapons that the Zephyrians couldn't defend against. Gravity cannons created localized black holes that crushed bioships into singularities. Phase disruptors caused enemy vessels to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, tearing them apart at the quantum level. Neural scramblers invaded the ship's biocomputer systems and convinced them to attack each other. In less than 10 minutes, the mighty Zephyrian fleet was reduced to floating debris and confused survivors. The Nexus Federation fleet, watching from the other side of the system, calculated their odds and came to a logical conclusion. Retreat was the optimal strategy. But as their ships began to turn away from Earth, they discovered that humanity had other plans. Captain Lu Wei's stealth reconnaissance ships had been shadowing the Nexus fleet since they entered the system. Now, they dropped their cloaking fields and revealed that they had been placing devices on the enemy ships for the past hour. Nexus fleet, Lu broadcast, "Your vessels are now equipped with our navigation controls. You will proceed to the coordinates we transmit, or we will activate the devices we've placed on your hulls." Fleet Admiral Construct 9, the AI that commanded the Nexus forces, ran 1,000,000 calculations per second trying to understand how human ships had approached undetected. Its cybernetic logic cores couldn't process the idea that an entire fleet had been infiltrated without any awareness of the threat. "Human vessel, your bluff is statistically improbable. Our sensors would have detected any boarding attempts." Lu smiled grimly. "Check your engine cores." The Nexus ships performed immediate internal scans and discovered small devices attached to their power systems. The devices were so advanced that they seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, explaining how they had been placed without detection. "These devices will cause your reactors to undergo cascade failure if activated," Liu explained conversationally. "The explosion will be visible from 3 star systems away. I suggest you follow our navigation instructions." The Nexus fleet, faced with technology they couldn't understand and threats they couldn't counter, had no choice but to comply. They were escorted to a position near Jupiter, where they were forced to watch as humanity revealed the true extent of their preparation. From hidden facilities throughout the solar system, Earth's real fleet began to emerge. These weren't the small stealth ships or defensive platforms that had handled the initial attacks. These were vessels built for one purpose: to project human power across the galaxy. The ships were massive, each one the size of a small moon, but they moved with impossible grace. Their hulls were covered in armor that seemed to absorb light itself, making them difficult to look at directly. Energy readings from their power cores registered as impossible, suggesting technology that harvested energy from dimensions beyond normal space. Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the solar system, broadcast on every frequency that both alien fleets could receive. "People of the galaxy, for 500 years you have waged war across the stars. You have destroyed civilizations, enslaved species, and turned space itself into a graveyard. You have done this while believing that you were the most advanced forms of life in the galaxy." The massive human ships began to move, accelerating to speeds that should have torn them apart, but didn't. Their energy signatures were unlike anything either alien empire had ever encountered. "You were wrong. Humanity has been watching your war since it began. We have studied your technologies, analyzed your tactics, and prepared for the day you might threaten our home. That day has come, and now you will learn what happens when you disturb a patient species." The human fleet didn't stop at the edge of the solar system. They continued accelerating, reaching speeds that shouldn't have been possible, heading directly toward the heart of both alien empires. Vex Prime, floating in the wreckage of his flagship, managed to send one last message before his biosuit failed. "All fleets, all worlds, the humans are not what we thought. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They are the apex predators of this galaxy, and we have awakened them." The message reached both empires simultaneously, carried by quantum communication arrays that operated faster than light itself. In the capitals of both the Zephyrian Collective and the Nexus Federation, leaders who had never known fear suddenly understood what terror felt like. General Stone stood on the bridge of the lead human vessel, the Titanus Prometheus, watching as Earth fell away behind them. The Titan Protocol soldiers were ready for war, but Marcus suspected that this conflict wouldn't last long enough for traditional combat. "General," reported Commander Santos from the fleet's reconnaissance division, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout Zephyrian space. It looks like they're mobilizing every ship they have." "And the Nexus?" Marcus asked. Similar response. "They're pulling ships from every sector, abandoning their war with each other to focus on us." Marcus smiled grimly. "Good. It's much easier to defeat your enemies when they're all in one place." The human fleet split into 3 groups as they approached the galactic core. One group headed for the Zephyrian homeworld, another toward the Nexus capital, and the third disappeared entirely, using stealth technology that rendered them invisible to every sensor in the galaxy. What happened next became known as the 3-Hour War, though most of it happened simultaneously across dozens of star systems. The Zephyrians, masters of biological warfare, discovered that their living weapons were useless against enemies who could phase in and out of normal spacetime. Their bioships tried to adapt to human weapons, but how do you evolve a defense against gravity weapons that create localized physics violations? The Nexus Federation, with their perfect mechanical precision, found that their AI systems couldn't calculate responses to technology that operated according to principles their logic cores couldn't process. Their predictive algorithms failed completely when faced with humans who seemed to exist partially outside normal reality. Both empires threw everything they had at the human fleets: weapons that could crack planets, defenses that had never been breached, tactics that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. None of it mattered. Humanity had spent 200 years preparing for this moment, and their preparation showed. When the 3 hours were over, both galactic empires had surrendered unconditionally. Their homeworlds were intact, their populations unharmed, but their military capabilities had been completely neutralized. Human ships sat in orbit over every major world in both empires, silent guardians that made it clear who now controlled the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Chen's final broadcast reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. "The war is over. Both empires will withdraw to their home systems and disarm their military fleets. Any attempt to restart hostilities will be met with immediate and overwhelming response. Humanity claims no territory beyond our own system, but we will enforce peace throughout the galaxy. You have 500 years of destruction to atone for. We suggest you begin rebuilding what you have destroyed." The galaxy, which had known nothing but war for 5 centuries, suddenly found itself at peace. It was a peace enforced by a species that most had never heard of, secured by technology that nobody understood, and maintained by the quiet thread of power that had only barely been demonstrated. In the depths of space, human ships patrolled silently between the stars, watching and waiting. The age of endless war was over. The age of human guardianship had begun. And in research stations throughout the solar system, human scientists continued their work, developing technologies that would keep the peace for generations to come. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all: the best way to end a war is to be so prepared for it that nobody wants to start one. The galaxy had frozen in fear when humanity's warships appeared. Now it would learn to live in the peace that fear had created.